Welcome to Canning with Colette. I am Colette the Canning Queen, and today we are making strawberry jam along with my partner and helper, Ebony. So it's a simple recipe. So we already have started with our strawberries. So here we go. So the strawberries have been nicely mashed. So we're gonna now get those measured out into our stainless steel pot. All right, and so we're going to put 5 cups of mashed strawberries inside. Thank you, Ebony. And make sure that they're nice. Do not use a food processor because you may over puree it. 2, 3, 4. Okay. Left over, so we'll do something with that later. So we've got 5 cups of crushed strawberries in the stainless steel pot. We're going to now add the pectin. Today I'm using Sure Gel low sugar pectin. So if you can get that inside for me, I'm going to measure 1 1/3 cup of apple juice with no sugar added. Today I'm using Mott's natural fresh pressed apple juice, not from concentrate. So about 1 1/3 cups of the apple juice. Just add that right in. And then we're going to need some lemon juice. Okay, so we're going to need we're going to do 6 tablespoons of apple juice. So you're going to do 12. I'm sorry, lemon juice. So sorry. 6 tablespoons of bottled lemon juice. I was expecting a few matches to show up, but they didn't show today. So the show must go on. We're still going to get this jam made. All right, so we have the lemon juice added. Get this nice and thoroughly stirred. And so now we're going to get this onto our heat source, which is our stove. And we're going to get that turned up to high. In the meantime, my jars, my canning mason jars, are sterilizing on the stove. So they've been boiling for a minimum of 10 minutes, so that's all that is required to sterilize your jars. And so we won't be needing this extra strawberries. I'll probably make another batch at another time. So I'll get all of that out of the way. And we're gonna wait for this to come to a boil. Once it comes to a rolling boil, then we'll get our sugar added. So while we wait for that, we'll get the sugar measured. 3 cups of white granulated sugar. You can use honey to substitute it. This is actually considered a low sugar recipe. Typically there's much more sugar added to a traditional jam, but we're trying to cut down on our sugar intake. So 5 cups of the mashed strawberries, 3 cups of the sugar. Typically it's about twice as much sugar, so we're not going to use all that sugar. And the only difference that you'll notice is you'll really get to taste your strawberries, and it will be a much softer spread, just not as gooey. Not all that sugar is actually necessary. Okay, so we'll get these 3 cups. You do want to make sure you pre-measure your sugar into a bowl so that when you're ready to add the sugar, it can all go in at one time. That's very important for it to go in at one time. All right, so once that gets rolling, boiling, then we'll add our sugar. All right, so the strawberries are starting to warm up. We need this to come to a nice rolling boil. So we're definitely not there yet, but you can definitely see where it's starting to heat up. It's typical for jams to, especially strawberries, to get like a little bit foamy. We can skim that off after the fact. But right now we're waiting for it to come to a rolling boil, so we'll give it a little bit longer. Okay, so it looks like we now have a rolling boil. That's what we want. As you can see, you want a boil that cannot be stirred down, so that when you stir it, it immediately comes back to a nice full rolling boil. And so now we're going to just add all of the sugar at once. And just make sure we get that stirred, completely blended in with the strawberries. And after we get this completely stirred in, we are going to wait for this to come now to another rolling boil. And when it comes to that rolling boil, we'll allow it to boil for 2 minutes. And then from there, we'll be ready to fill our jars with the strawberry jam. So this recipe is called a quick jam recipe. The pectin that we're using helps to speed the process up. All right, that looks nice and blended. So we're going to allow this to come to a nice rolling boil, and then we'll remove any foam that's on top, and then we'll proceed. All right, so now while my jam is coming to a boil, I'm going to start removing my hot jars out of the canner. So they've already boiled. They're super hot. In fact, they're still boiling. So this way you want to use some tongs to protect yourself. You don't want to burn yourself. So I'm going to grab the jars, pour out the water, and just bring them over to my table that I'm going to be doing the jarring from, or filling the jars at. So you could use your tongs, or you could use the jar lifter. To me, I think the tongs maneuver better than the jar lifter, so this is what I'm referring to, the jar lifter. So you can use the jar lifter as well. So whichever you're comfortable with. Okay? Whichever feels best for you. All right, looks like, all right. My jam is starting to boil. So we've got a timer going for 2 minutes. Pretty much by the time I get all these jars out, get set up, and we'll be ready to turn off the heat and skim off any unwanted foam. There is one way to cut down on the foam. If you add about a teaspoon of butter to your jam, it will cut down on some of the foam. All right. Put the lid back on here. Okay, so if you want to, we'll have you zoom in so you can see the rolling boil that's taking place here. Let me grab my spoon, sorry. So you see that there? We're rolling again, and you see the foam? There we go. So I'm going to give it one last stir. And we'll allow it to kick up boiling again. And typically as it starts to boil, the foam typically spreads around the edges, as you can see there. It looks good, it smells delicious. Wonderful, look at that nice rolling boil. That's exactly what we want. We've got about another 30 seconds to go. And then I will turn off the heat. I'll remove my pot from the heat, and then I'll start to skim off some of this unwanted foam. The foam is not dangerous. It just doesn't always look pleasant in the jars. So removing the foam just gives it a more attractive appearance. Beautiful. See how the foam spreads to the edges? All right, so I'm going to turn off the heat. And I'm just going to move my pot to the front just to let it start to cool a little bit. And I'll let it cool for maybe 2 minutes and then I'll start to remove the foam. Okay, so the jam has sat for a couple of minutes, so I'm now going to just skim off some of this unwanted foam. Try not to scoop too much of the actual jam under it. See the difference when we start to remove that foam? And whatever you do, don't stir it after it's already starting to cool, because the foam will just blend right in. And you'll be back to square one again. So just try to get as much foam as you can. And you can eat this. You can throw this in a smoothie or something like that, or sweeten up something. You can still eat it. Save it for some type of topping on a dessert. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's get this over to my workstation. All right, so we're going to bring our pot over to our workstation, wherever that is in your kitchen. And we are already set up with our jars and our utensils, our lids and pans. I've got some white vinegar here and a few napkins that I'm going to use to clean the rims of the jars. So here we are. We have our ladle, we've got our funnel, and we're just going to go ahead and start filling the jars. I'm just going to stir this a little bit just to even it out. And it is going to be soupy. Don't worry about that. It will thicken when we're done with the complete process. So after these jars are filled, they'll process back in the canner for 10 minutes, and then they'll set on our counter for about 12-18 hours, or till just the next day. And then it'll be nice and the consistency will thicken. All right, so we want to fill these up to a 1/4 inch headspace. So we're going to be using this tool called the headspace ruler. This end is used for debubbling. This end is used for measuring the headspace. Each notch is a 1/4 inch, and so for this recipe, we leave open a 1/4 inch of headspace. So first I'm going to debubble by just kind of popping around a couple times. You can even stir it gently, okay? And then from there, I'm going to measure my headspace. So we're doing just 1/4 inch. So I'll place that notch there. Now you can see I still have some space. This is about, looks like a 1/2 inch. So I need to add a little bit more jam. I'm just gonna add just a little bit. All right, so now let's measure and see where we're at. Looks like I still could stand another drizzle. Let's just add a little bit more. The tip should land right on top of the strawberry. Oh, there we go, perfect. So we don't want it to where the tip is down in it like that, and it shouldn't be above. It should land right on top. So we're there now. So now what I'm gonna do is clean up the rim of the jar. I'll take a napkin. You can use a paper towel or a clean cloth. I'm gonna dip it into my white vinegar. Make sure you thoroughly squeeze it. And then just come on over here and clean the rim to remove any residue, because that could prevent your jars or the lid from sealing onto the jar. Okay, so I typically do that a couple times until I get a nice clean wipe. And you're really only focused really mostly on this rim here. You can also clean up the edges or the outer rim here if you notice that there's some spillage. Okay, all right, so now I'm gonna grab my my magnetic lid lifter. I'm gonna grab a lid and center that onto the jar. Grab a band, and we are now going to gently twist the band on, just fingertip tight. Not too tight because air needs to still escape. Okay, so as soon as you start to feel resistance, that's when you should stop twisting. So I'm gonna grab this one and go ahead and place this back into the canner. Now you can do them all first and then put them all in the canner, or you can do them one by one, it's up to you. I just wanted to show you the whole process first. Okay, and now we're back at it. We're filling the jar with our jam. Like I said, it will be liquidy. Don't worry about that. We're still in the process. Okay, so I'm kind of eyeballing it from here. I'm gonna debubble. Take out any air pockets that might be hiding in there. And then we'll see. I can kind of tell by looking at it that I'm gonna need a little bit more, but let's go ahead and measure that first notch. So as you can see, there's still some empty head space there, so we want to bring that level up a bit. Let's see what we got there. Oh, there we go. Yeah, perfect. All right. And I can see the mess around the outside mouth of the jar, so we want to get that cleaned up. Like I said, and if you didn't have white vinegar, you could just use some hot water. Vinegar just does well removing sticky food particles as well as oily particles. So that's why the white vinegar is typically recommended or used. All right, perfect. Okay, let's grab ourselves a lid, center it on, grab a band, and again, we're only going to twist this just enough to resistance, and that's it. You do not want to over twist or over tighten the bands on. You want to be able to allow air to continue to escape. So we will have a few more jars, and like I said, we could do it assembly style. So we could just fill the jars first. So let's try it that way, so you see what that process is like. It's whatever you feel comfortable doing. So I'd fill that one, then I would just jump on over here to the next one. Maybe move this one out the way. And this is the same process for any type of jam that you're making. You're just gonna follow whatever the ingredients are, but the process is always the same. Okay. That one I might have overfilled. So I might need to take some out, but we'll see after we debubble. Because oftentimes when you debubble, it opens up a little bit of space in your jar, and the level will go down just a little bit sometimes. So this is what I kind of call the assembly line process. Almost there. We might have enough for one more jar, I'm not sure. Kind of close. Okay, one more. Let's see what we got here. I'm not sure if we're gonna make it. I'm actually gonna pour this. Uh-oh, I think we may have made it. We'll see. All right, so now since we're doing assembly style, all the jam is in. Now we got to go back and debubble all of them. So you can put your funnel on and do it if you want. The funnel helps just to prevent spillage. So we'll go around each one. All right. Okay. This one's very, a lot of foam on still. Move that foam out. Okay. So now let's start start to measure the headspace. That one looks good. This one is over a little bit. This one can use a little bit more. This one definitely needs more. This one needs more. So I'm gonna find myself a little spoon. See if we can make some adjustments here. So we said that this one could use just a smidget, so I'll take some out of here to add. All right, that measure this one. That one actually looks good now. This one could use just a little bit, so I'll take some out of here. Measure. Looks perfect now. This one I can definitely tell could use more, so we'll take some out of here. Still could use a little bit more. All right. Well, this one still has a little bit of foam on it, so I'm going to just scoop some of this foam out. So that we have a prettier jam in the end result. So now I'll remeasure. So now we need a little bit more, so I'll take some here. Okay, awesome. So as you can see, this one has quite a bit of headspace. It has about close to an inch of headspace, so that's just way too much headspace. So we'll just put the lid on this and I'll refrigerate this, and we'll just eat that at another time. So I'm gonna take some of this one had a little foam. I'm gonna take off. And I'm making a mess, but that's okay because we're gonna definitely clean it up. This one has a little foam as well. So since I'm taking the foam off, I'm gonna remeasure all of these just to make sure we've got the right headspace, okay? So this one could use more, so I'll take from this other one. Jars are kind of hot, so don't do this at home. Okay, looks good. So let's get to cleaning our jars now. Again, we can do assembly. We can just clean them all one by one and then come back and start placing the lids on. We're gonna wipe until we get a clean wipe. Usually 2 to 3 times is typically good enough. Okay. This one I really made a mess, so I'll probably have to go around a few times on this one. You could also use a cloth, a clean cloth. I think I might have mentioned that. So something like nice clean white cloth or whichever color. I prefer white because then you know for sure it's clean. Like a tea cloth. All right, 2 more to go. And like I said, this is important because if we have any residue that could possibly prevent our jars from sealing, we don't want that. We want to do all this work just for the jars not to seal. Okay, one last one to do. And if the jars are too hot for you to handle, you can wear like the thick kitchen gloves. Sometimes I do that if the jars are just too hot to handle. All right, awesome. So now we'll just, and here's another magnetic lid lifter. You can get all our lids on at once, whatever's comfortable to you. Back and get our bands on. Gently twist. Gently twist. One last one. Oops. Okay. And we will place the remaining jars into the canner. You can zoom in so that I can show our viewers the amount of water that needs to go inside the canner. So they need to be fully submerged, and you want to have at least 1 inch above water of your jars, okay? So here it looks like we have about maybe 1.5 inches. So that's perfect. We're gonna put the lid on and wait for this to come to a boil. Okay, so the jars of jam are boiling, and that's the type of boil that we want, a nice rolling boil. And so we'll allow them to boil 10 minutes. After that, we'll take off the lid, let them set for 2 minutes, and then remove the jars one by one and place on our countertop. Okay, so our jars have boiled for 10 minutes. I allowed them to set for a while. Now we're going to remove them one by one using our jar lifter, because these jars are piping hot. The temperature gets up to about 212 degrees Fahrenheit. And even though, I did allow them to set for a few minutes, they're still super hot. You want to make sure that you place them on some type of towel so that there's no temperature shock, and space them so that we can get a nice even flow of air as they begin to cool. You may begin to hear some pinging and popping. Don't let that make you nervous if you're doing it yourself one day. That is just the sound of the lid concaving and creating a hermetic seal. Okay, I think that was it. That was the last one. We'll let that stay there. So here we are.